Will Spain ban Airbnb and what it all means for tourists and expats? Let's talk about it. People are angry, and rightfully so. We've spoken about this topic before, and I pointed out that the people shouldn't be angry at the tourists, but by how those in charge are managing this situation. I don't think an outright ban would necessarily be a good thing, but there certainly should be conversations to at least heavily restrict it. The question is, what could that mean? Especially for tourists, digital nomads and expats who have been flocking here over the last few years. And let's be honest, it's not just a Spanish issue. Cities all over the world are starting to push back against short-term rentals. The problem, as far as I'm concerned, is those that take advantage of long-term and short-term rentals. Like seriously, pick a lane and stop taking advantage of people by renting out for 8 months and then expecting locals to shift while you pocket 4 times the amount during the summer. It's outrageous. As you can hear, it's something very close to my heart. Spain is a really interesting case because it's dealing with a housing crisis, a population imbalance, and it has a tourism economy all at once. In places like Barcelona, the local government is kind of leading the charge here. They've already announced some pretty strong regulations to limit short-term holiday rentals. The idea is to try and give the city back to its residents because housing prices have gotten so out of control that many locals simply can't afford to live in their own neighborhoods. Entire apartment blocks have turned into unofficial hotels. And this is the thing, landlords know they can make quadruple the money listing it on Airbnb to tourists. So now the city's basically saying enough is enough. Other regions are taking a similar approach, but it really depends where you are. Some places are going full on with restrictions, whilst others are still pretty relaxed. You've got coastal tourist hotspots like Valencia and parts of Andalusia, where councils are under pressure to balance tourism income with livability. And then you've got Madrid, where the local government is a bit more business friendly. But even there, they're starting to realize that unchecked short-term rentals are squeezing out long-term residents. The thing is though, Madrid really is more business focused, so it makes sense that their approach is different. What is wild is that while some regions are doing everything they can to stop people from coming, others are doing the opposite. Yeah, you heard that correct. Some regions are trying to encourage investment. Extremadura, for example, has a completely different approach. They're not banning Airbnbs. They're literally offering financial incentive to get people to move there. You've probably seen those stories where tiny towns in rural Spain are trying to pay people to come to live in abandoned villages. That's not just a publicity stunt. It's genuinely because those areas are dying out. Young people have left, birth rates are low, there are entire schools with only a handful of kids. So while Barcelona is like, stop, please, we have too much, Extremadura is paying people to stay. And this kind of reflects the broader identity crisis Spain's having right now. On one hand, it's one of the most desirable places in Europe for lifestyle, weather, and food. But it's also facing some very real internal pressures. There is this growing resentment among locals towards expats and digital nomads who come in with higher salaries, driving up the prices and changing the character of the neighborhoods. And I think some people don't realize that while your money might go further here, it doesn't go further for the people who live here and have done their whole lives. At the same time, banning or restricting Airbnb is complicated. It's not just about kicking tourists out. There are Spanish families who rely on short-term rentals as a source of income. There are people who genuinely need the flexibility that Airbnb offers. And of course, tourism is a major economic driver, especially in places where other industries have collapsed. So any changes are going to be messy. I'd also like to point out that I think banning Airbnb outright is a bad thing to do overall. There are plenty of hotels that aren't filling up here in Spain. Why? Because the prices are too high. It was mentioned in one of my previous videos, but it's not fair to expect hotels to lower their prices to fix this issue. But the government could be creating some sort of incentive program, or if rules are being put in places for Airbnb, can't the same be done for the hotels? I'm literally just throwing these ideas out here, right? Like, I'm not saying they need to do this, but yeah, you get my point. I just find it interesting that up to now, the anger and hostility has been aimed at visitors when there are a lot more people to answer for who are not in the firing line. But the direction seems pretty clear. Stricter rules are coming, especially in the bigger cities. We are going to see more registration requirements, caps on the number of licenses, even outright bans in some areas. And for expats or tourists, it means planning a trip or a move to Spain might get a little bit more complicated. That said, it might also be an opportunity. If you're someone looking to live in Spain and not just pass through, this shift could actually work in your favor. And that's where I come in. I genuinely love my life here in Spain, even with the positives and negatives. I feel very lucky and proud to be here, and it's thanks to the wonderful people of this country. I just hope we can find a resolution to this problem. If tourism gets rebalanced and housing becomes more affordable in the long term, you might see more livable cities, more stable neighborhoods, maybe even incentives to live in places that are off the beaten track, such as we saw in Extremadura, and they actually want you to be there. So will Spain ban Airbnb entirely? Probably not, but the free-for-all era is definitely coming to an end. And depending on who you are, a tourist, a local, an expat, or just someone looking for a better quality of life, that could be either a really good thing or kind of a wake-up call. What's your thoughts on this? Would you consider living somewhere like Extremadura for a financial incentive? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.